too bad.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2, April 8th.
Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week. Today, though, we have a special episode that is going to dive into the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 movie, and no one better to have on to discuss this. You've heard him on before. We've talked about Sonic collectibles. We've talked about the comic books that have released, and he is back. It is Treasure Hunting Sonic. Welcome back, Justin.
Hey, brother, thanks for having me again. I always love being here.
How many times have you seen this movie so far, as of us recording?
So far, twice. I did a sneak preview and one with a group of friends.
So twice you've seen it. I've seen it once before, so you're going to get some good coverage here from Justin and I, hopefully. But quick warning, this is a spoiler episode, so if you have not seen Sonic the Hedgehog 2, we will be going into some plot points in case you do care about spoilers, especially towards the end of the film. We are going to jump into a lot of that. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to break down the film by story, then acting, and special effects. Millennial Mike and I recently did a Morbius review and discussion, so I'm going to take some notes that he put together. I really liked his ideas, and we are going to talk about our favorite parts of the film, our least favorite parts of the film, what we want to see for the potential third part, some references we noticed, but that'll be after our actual discussion and dissection of the story, acting, and special effects. So let's jump right in and discuss. Again, this was your warning, spoilers moving forward, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So this one was directed by Jeff Fowler, who previously worked on the first Sonic the Hedgehog. That was his major directorial sort of debut. He had done some projects before that, but that was his largest project up to that point. It's written by Pat Casey, who previously did Team Hot Wheels, Josh Miller, who worked with Pat Casey, but they also did 12 Deadly Days, and John Whittington, who worked on the Lego Batman movie, one of my favorite films. It does star James Marsden from X-Men, Jim Carrey from Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, Ben Schwartz from Parks and Rec, and Tika Sumpter from Southside With You. So already we've got some pretty good cast that did return from the first film. So I want to ask you, Justin, going into the second film, were there any cast members that you would have been okay with maybe a smaller role on? Or were you happy to see everyone return from the first film plus a couple of new additions?
Yeah, I was happy to see everyone return. I thought everybody did a great, like you said, Jim Carrey obviously stole the show. Tika Sumpter, James Marsden, I thought they were great in the first one. I do feel like they had a little bit smaller role in this film just because, they had to give more screen time to Tails and Knuckles. So, they had to focus less on like the human aspect.
Well, that is one criticism I do have of this, and it goes into the story. So let's kind of dive into the story here. In the first film, Leo was going to go see it. He saw the commercial on YouTube, and he was like, oh, Sonic 2. And he was really excited about it. And we're like, all right, yeah, we can go see it. And it's my son's second movie on the big screen. His first one was Paw Patrol. So I'm like, all right, let's go. And then Kelly said, well, let's watch the first one before he goes and sees the second one. And I'm like, well, I don't have it. I was boycotting it and all that. She's like, okay, well, let me rent it for $3 and then I'll show it to him. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I sat down with them and I watched it, and it's all right, cool, whatever. I noticed that the relationship between James Marsden and Sonic changed pretty drastically between the first and the second film. In the first film, the writing itself, even and the way they wrote Sonic, was a lot more like buddy cop sort of. They were more friends. They were messing around with each other. Sonic was a little bit more of a smartass than in the sequel. Right. And then in the sequel, it opens up and they're like on a boat, and it's like a father-son relationship. So to me, I'm okay with either relationship, but there's a difference there. There's a sudden change. So what I'm already used to from the first film, I'm like, okay, now it's a parental role, and maybe it's to easier move into a plot in which James Marsden's like, all right, he needs people like him because he can't just have us. Maybe that's the type of message they were going in. But did that bug you as well based on what they already established in the first film?
It didn't really bug me that much because in the first film, they obviously de-aged Sonic a little bit from the games. Like instead of being like a 15-year-old, I think he was supposed to be like, 10, 11, 12-ish. And he was basically like, obviously not from planet Earth. So in that first film, when they first met him, they're not going to have that parental dynamic. It was definitely more of the buddy cop dynamic, I think, and it fit the situation. However, at the end of the first one, they gave him the room in the attic and everything. So him being a kid, it was obviously going to evolve into like a more parental role. And I think James Marsden and Tika Sumpter's role in the second movie, reflected that. Like, the first movie is more grounded to reality, where in this one, they had like dimension hopping and, Knuckles and the lore with the echidnas and the owls. So I feel like they were cut back like just the right amount. Like they were still in the movie. They had stuff to do, but they weren't, very prominent because Sonic kind of branched out on his own and we didn't need to be grounded in reality as much.
Plot point, I will agree there. There's one thing that I kept hearing, very similar to what you just said, where people were saying the focus moved less from the humans and more onto the Sonic characters. And they're like, they finally listened to more of what fans were saying after the first film, where we want more from Sonic. And I was excited. I'm like, all right, let's go dimension hopping. There was rumors that we were going to maybe see a Sega world at some point that had like at least a reference to some of these other Sonic characters or Sega characters in general. And they got to that scene where James Marsden was going to Hawaii with his wife. I think they're married in the film.
Yep.
And they were going off, and I'm like, okay, this is how they write them off. And while they're gone, this stuff with Knuckles and Eggman is going to happen, and it's going to be funny because while they're gone, their house is probably going to get destroyed or whatever. And we'll get that scene at the end of the film of them coming back, like, what the hell happened, And that's, but then then we have this whole plot about this wedding, and they're still in the movie a lot. And towards the end, and I was like, this is the same as the first one as far as the human interactions are concerned. Like, let's not pretend that this was like a Sonic Sega film. It was very much similar to the first one. So to me, that kind of deflated me a little bit when it came to the story, especially when we got to the wedding, because it felt like the film kind of stopped at that point where we were spending a lot of time with the undercover cop and the fake wedding and this guy, the government agent. And I'm like, man, can we just move on and get to the Knuckles and Sonic confrontation a little bit?
And I do agree. And that's like the most common complaint I'm hearing is that they spent too much time on the wedding scene. I did enjoy it. Was it a little bit too long and like a little bit overacted? Yes. I am happy that I don't know the actress's name, but the girl that plays Rachel, the one who's getting married, I'm glad that she got her time to shine. And I think ultimately it was a way to introduce Gunn, all the secret agents and everything set up for the after credit scene. But also too, I thought it had like the right amount of like humor, and it like kind of brought things back like to reality. Mm-hmm. And I mean, let's be honest, like in the real world, when they sign like these actors, they have to give them, a certain amount of screen time in the movie. So did it detract from the whole like Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles adventure? Yes, it did. But I get why it exists, if that makes sense.
And I don't know if these actors are big enough to where maybe they were required X amount of screen time. I'm not too sure. But they did balance it out in a way where we did get larger action sequences and way more interactions between the Sonic and Knuckles and Eggman and all of that compared to the first one. And the first one, it was, like you had mentioned, a little bit more grounded. And this one, they were able to elevate that a little bit more. So because of that, I do feel like I'm not upset at it. Like, oh shit, man. Like this fell short. It didn't. It did excel in that portion, but it was also like we got more Sonic and we got more humans. It felt like
wedding scene. Like if you take out the wedding scene and that like little 2-minute scene with the boat at the beginning, like the whole rest of the movie was like nonstop Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Eggman.
Yes. Yeah. Basically, because at the end, their humans are kind of there. They're stealing a car and all that. But you're right. The wedding was the largest chunk.
I didn't think like okay, if they would have cut down the wedding scene by 10 minutes, that would have given us more time with the Sonic characters, because we got enough of them throughout the movie. They didn't like really skimp out on anything, I didn't feel like.
I do want to talk about some of the stuff that I did enjoy as far as how they handled Knuckles, because that was probably the Knuckles and Tails were huge additions to this movie. They were going to be the main draw, I think, of why they did the sequel. I wasn't expecting like at the very end, and then we got Amy as a surprise or anything like that. It was like, no, these are going to be the new characters right here, were Knuckles and Tails. So the way that Tails got brought in, it it seemed to sort of fit everything else as far as interdimensional hopping. Notice the energy signal. Knuckles, I did like that, yes, while it's not that he was fooled by Eggman like in the Sonic games of he's going to steal the emerald quite the same. I did enjoy that the way they handled Knuckles as a Knuckles fan. That's my favorite character. They didn't make him into a musclehead. They didn't make him into someone less intelligent like in the Sonic Boom cartoons, which I do like, but that's not the character necessarily that I'm used to. And instead, he's more of a warrior. He's someone that takes things a little bit more literally based on his culture. This is a completely different world. He's got different context when it comes to how he communicates because Sonic has had some time on Earth. He's read so many comic books and seen movies. Exactly. He's a part of us. And that's why Knuckles does feel a little bit detached. And I like the way they handled him compared to what they could have done, in which, I was afraid that they were just going to make him a musclehead.
Yeah. And, I have heard people say like, oh, like they still made Knuckles stupid, but it's like, no, they didn't. At the end of the baseball scene, when he says like, oh, base of ball, and they have to like, explain to him what baseball is and ice cream is. It's not that he's dumb, it's that he's a fish out of water.
Exactly.
Sonic only knew like when he came to Earth, he didn't know what baseball and ice cream was. He had to learn it. You got to remember, Knuckles has only been there for a couple days.
And he also didn't have the same upbringing that Sonic is having now of this is how we have fun. He lost from what I remember, the echidna species was wiped out during that supposed war against the owls, right? He said he was the last of his kind.
Yeah, and Sonic and Knuckles, that's when they have their first little bonding moment. They both say they lost everything that day.
Exactly right. So this is a Knuckles that maybe was robbed of some of his childhood. We don't know. They don't say how old Knuckles is in the movie, right?
I don't think so. I want to say him and Sonic are close to the same age. Knuckles has always been a little bit older, and I still got that vibe like when they show Kid Knuckles in the movie, which was totally unexpected, by the way. But I did get the vibe that he was a few years older than baby Sonic was in the first movie, which was taking place on the exact same day.
Yeah, that's very true. So very close to age, maybe a little bit older. Now, when they got to his introduction, and they wrote this bit of dialogue that I think if they had, I'm gonna go at this from a film perspective. I'm a fan too, but I got to talk about some of the things that did bug me, where he's fighting Sonic, and you're seeing just how separate in powers the two characters are. Knuckles mentions a few times, if they had written this bit of dialogue out of your powers are not refined, you're untrained, he keeps mentioning these things to him, which I think could have paid off later in a good way. Maybe Knuckles taking him a little bit under his wing or showing him a little, just something that they would have given us, and they didn't. And I'm like, okay, which would have been okay, fine. But at the end, when Sonic and Knuckles fight again, it seems like they're on even footing, if not Sonic beating him to where he's knocking him down in the ground. And I'm like, so at what point did Knuckles' harnessing of his powers, like why is he suddenly struggling against Sonic? And that's one part that if they hadn't given us that line of Knuckles talking to Sonic about their powers and how unrefined Sonic's is compared to his training, then that wouldn't have bugged me. But that was one thing that, again, it just didn't connect from a writing standpoint. Like maybe they could have gone through one more pass just to see those little inconsistencies. And I don't know if anyone else brought that up as they were watching it. Maybe you're more connected into the Sonic community, but it just didn't make sense when they got to the temple at the end.
Yeah, I haven't really seen anybody bring that up, but that is a good point. I feel like that's one of the things I'll look for next time I watch the movie.
Yeah, I'll have to see, because I brought that up to my siblings as well, and I think that they mentioned that obviously Sonic is faster than Knuckles in this iteration of it for sure. And that maybe Sonic's speed was he was able to overcome and whatnot. I'm not too sure, but when
you remember that where Knuckles was constantly trying to punch him and Sonic was dodging, he wasn't really attacking, but he was more like evading. So maybe like he was just using his speed to overcome, Knuckles' power.
Because he does mention, I don't want to fight you, but I will. I think that's what he says in the final battle. And the first time they did confront each other, Sonic did try to fight him and try to match him power to power, and Knuckles obviously had the upper hand in that aspect. And then by the time they got to the final fight, yeah, he was more or less, although they did have that contact in the center when they first started fighting in front of the Master Emerald.
Yep.
And then later on, that's when Sonic was more or less just trying to tell him like, Eggman's going to take this, kind of like in the games.
Exactly.
And I'm so happy that Eggman did return and that they did make him, his relationship with Dr. Stone, was it? his assistant,
Agent Stone. Yeah.
Agent Stone, was amazing in the first film, and then in the sequel, like in the first time I'm seeing it with Kelly, I'm like, oh, I think he loves him. There's like a gay thing going on. And then the sequel, they really leaned into it, where he's making the latte art about Eggman,
Yeah.
and I'm like, yes.
I got that vibe too. I'm okay with it, but yeah, the guy that plays Agent Stone, Lee Majube, he's like the most awesome guy.
He was great in this. Like, there was no reason for him to return, but I'm glad they brought him back. Really, yeah. Like,
I want to say like the first movie was his acting debut. I could be wrong.
Shit.
But I know like he's gotten other roles in TV shows and stuff now. But like he's always on Twitter interacting with fans. Like, you know, you'll tweet at him or respond to one of his tweets, and he'll actually, you know, respond to you. And he just seems like a legit, like really great guy.
What I liked about his character compared to the two movies is, in the first one, it did seem like, we keep saying this, more grounded, more serious. And here it seems like they just let him play a little bit more.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I do like that Eggman is either oblivious to it, because he doesn't, I don't know if he doesn't notice the latte art because he gives it to him and he immediately drinks it and he's like, he needs more mushroom, or if he just doesn't care because he's all about evil. You
know what it reminded me of a lot? So you grew up watching The Simpsons, right?
Yeah.
It reminded me of there's a Mr. Burns.
Yes.
We're like from Mr. Burns, when Mr. Burns is like too involved in himself to realize it.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. That's exactly the same.
But did you notice the two references surrounding Agent Stone's character? That like first he owns the Mean Bean coffee shop.
I did notice that.
Love that. I forget who walks in. Maybe it was Eggman. I think it was when Eggman or Robotnik and Knuckles walk in, and he's like flipping through the screen of all the different outfits he could dress up Robotnik. And there's like the old school like red and yellow.
Yeah.
On Jim Carrey, and I just thought that was really cool. I want to see a screen cap of that so I can get a better look.
Yeah, that was when that cop guy was coming in, and
that was it. That was it. Cop guy. Wait, yeah.
So they found a good way to, I mean, maybe because I read the comic, the tie-in prequel comic that kind of explains how Knuckles is tied into this. But how did you feel about the overall story of Knuckles? I'm assuming reads the energy, much like Tails does, but for Eggman, after the quill is activated on that mushroom zone, and that's how he finds Sonic, or Eggman at least, and then he's like, lead me to Sonic, and then they go back to Earth. They're able to travel through the rings, like we saw in the first film. And then there were those other aliens that I don't remember them being a reference to any of the games. They are in that prequel comic, and they give us more backstory on them. But were they a reference to any Sonic lore?
I didn't catch anything there. I also did not read the comic yet.
Okay.
But I didn't catch any references with them.
Because that was the one part that I'm like, all right, maybe that was in one of the adventure games. I'm not sure, or if they were just original for the film.
I think they might be. Granted, I'm not going to say like I'm completely right, because I wasn't really paying like with them. I really wasn't looking for a reference. Like now, again, like when I see the movie again, I will. But nothing stood out to me.
When they went to like Knuckles finds him and he's telling the backstory about the echidnas and the Master Emerald and all of that, we're getting that as an audience member. I'm obviously biased, but when they show the storyboards, which are amazing, and then that one guy gets the power of the Master Emerald, and then the owls are coming back, and they're like, they needed to stop it from anyone having these powers because it's too much for one, and Knuckles and the echidnas had the power to eliminate entire armies. And when they got to the owls like rushing him, I'm like, whoa, he just got the power. He didn't say anything about using it against everyone. You guys are just waging this war against this echidna here. Like, let him just have the power. He's not doing anything with it yet. You guys need to chill.
And speaking of the power of the emeralds and everything, I really loved that Robotnik used it on himself.
Yes.
Because, in the games, when Sonic isn't using the emeralds or whatever, Eggman Robotnik, whatever, is just using them to power one of his machines.
Right.
But movie, he actually used them on himself and kind of became Super Robotnik.
And that was a good way for them to explain the giant boss from Sonic 3 and Sonic 3 and Knuckles, where I had such a hard time with that boss, and I got like Vietnam flashback seeing it on the big screen, because I'm like, oh my God, it's that fucking boss where when the arms come down, you have to hit him right at that sweet spot in the chest.
I thought that was so cool, like how, he took because when I saw the trailer, I'm like, how the hell does he build that?
Yeah.
Secret. How do you keep something like that hidden? And then, when it showed how he did it, like taking apart the train, the tanks and everything, using the power of the emerald, I was like, damn, I was like, they need to implement this into the games.
It was basically the power to recreate the world. And if he had harnessed this for a year, like imagine all the crazy stuff. Like he was just learning how to use this power.
Yeah, and like I said, I would love to see that in the games. Like the next Sonic game, like Eggman actually used the emerald for himself and
Yeah.
just, start wrecking stuff.
When they got to that point of the film, I also liked that they didn't go for the trope of Eggman getting corrupted by the emeralds or something like that. It was still him, and he was still controlling everything, and it was still his sense of humor. It wasn't like a robotic Eggman, if you will, or a godlike one. He was having fun with it, and he's like, and I'm gonna destroy Sonic too. And that was kind of the turnaround with Knuckles kind of realizing this is all right. These guys are on my side at the end of the day. We got to stop Eggman. He had this moment of almost hurt of Eggman. He telling Eggman, "You're my friend," I think is what he told him, and Eggman laughs at him. he's like, "I don't have friends. This isn't
weak and stuff." Yeah,
yeah, that's what he kept telling. And
that dishonorable and this is how I roll.
Yes, yeah, they had all of that, and then that's when Sonic and Knuckles are able to have their moment on the beach of Sonic or Knuckles having that another moment of trust with someone else, which almost, it's like, oh, I'm glad that happened because he's already been betrayed by this Eggman guy. He figured he'd want to almost do it on his own, and they were able to come together and use each of their own strengths, which I thought I got like some slight Sonic Heroes vibes from that.
Yes, for sure.
And that they were able to defeat Eggman along with their family. And then we got to see, and I was expecting it because they had the emeralds and they had all of the Chaos Emeralds too, but it was still neat to see Super Sonic at the very end.
Oh yeah, definitely. I really didn't think, I obviously heard the spoilers before the movie came out, thanks to McDonald's, who, from what I understand, spoils a lot of stuff. But I really didn't expect Super Sonic to show up so soon.
And the way they rendered him, I'm like, this is Dragon Ball Z. This is so cool.
For sure.
I of course wanted to see, I eventually want to see a Hyper Knuckles. I want to see a Turbo Tails. I don't know if we'll ever get that. But,
don't hold your breath.
Is that part? I know they were in the games.
They were in the one game, but from what I understand, that's not a canon thing anymore.
I gotcha. I thought you were going to say it was an Archie creation because I know they were in there. That's what they called them in that.
Well, Turbo Tails was an Archie creation, but I think in the game he was just called Super Tails. And I know we got a Super Tails Funko Pop in 2020.
Oh, cool.
But from what I understand, anything involving Hyper Knuckles has always been shot down by Sega.
Gotcha. Well, that's too bad. I know in the sequel we'll probably see a maybe we'll get we're going into spoilers here, so do you think we'll get a Super Shadow and Super Sonic in Sonic 3 by that reveal that we got in the end credits?
Definitely think so.
Sonic Adventure 2 stuff right there, going into space?
I definitely think so.
I think so too. I think we're going to get that. When you have Shadow in there, you kind of expect as a fan to, obviously they're going to have that, he's going to fight all three of them, Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails at some point, and they're going to have to come together and maybe fight. Who's going to be, do you think they'll introduce another villain for the third one, or will they bring back Jim Carrey? Because I know Jim has said that this is he plans on retiring after this, but he's not closing the door.
Yeah, I do think that he will be back. If not, I could totally see them like replacing. Okay, so if they were going Sonic Adventure in the next route and not Sonic Adventure 2, I could see them making like Chaos the main villain, maybe like Hidden Tribe and Chaos or something, tweaking the story a little bit. But with Sonic Adventure 2, unless they decide to just make Shadow the main villain, I really don't expect that. I think he'll be back. But being that we're in like, deep spoiler territory, I wasn't really thrilled with the after credit scene. Shadow's he's never been my favorite character.
Mm-hmm.
I think they introduced him they wanted to introduce him quick because he does have a lot of fans.
Right.
Just like Knuckles, he has a lot of fans. And he'll be a big box office draw, but I do think they should have done Sonic Adventure before they did Sonic Adventure 2. And if, my hope for the after credit scene was Metal Sonic, because I wanted to see Sonic CD on the big screen, Metal Sonic, Amy, all them. But if they were going to go the adventure route and skip over all that, I really do wish they would have done Adventure 1 first.
Gotcha. And Metal debuted in which one again?
CD.
CD's nuts. Got him. All right. I had to had to do it. I actually expected Amy to be the post-credit scene, to be honest with you.
I didn't expect that just because I know she's not like the biggest. She wouldn't be the biggest box office draw.
Yeah, but we're in 2022. Like, you need the female character in there. You need the representation.
I do think since they're going to Venture 2, I think they will have Rouge.
Boobs the Bat, you think so?
Yep. Probably with less boobs.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if I would go that far. I don't know if they'd have Rouge, but so let's talk about the performances real quick, because the voice actor for Tails, she had mentioned on Twitter that she wants to see Amy Rose in one of these future movies. Do you think that's a hint at maybe we will get Amy in part 3? Because you know actors tend to kind of hint and push.
It definitely could be. I could totally see it happening, but I just think, like, personally, I think the whole CD story would have been the perfect debut.
And we could still get Metal Sonic. It's very possible. I mean, they don't have to follow Sonic Adventure 2, so that would have been that's probably the next most recognizable villain in the Sonic franchise, as far as like Eggman, and if you don't want to consider Shadow a villain, then it's definitely Metal Sonic. So I was a little surprised that even in this one, I thought that the surprise would have been Eggman building a Metal Sonic or something that he would have had to go supersonic against or something, you know? But it didn't end up paying off that way, and that's okay, but it was kind of like, all right, well, maybe in the next one, and I don't even know if that's going to happen, because Shadow is a pretty big focus as far as a story. You can do a lot of things with the character and with Gunn. With Tails' performance, are you kind of surprised that do you think we'll get more voice actors playing the roles of these films rather than actors in the sequels?
I really hope so. You know, the internet was ecstatic when Colleen Shaughnessy was able to reprise the role, because everybody thought she was going to be recast into like a big, you know, well-known actor. And I think, you know, she did a great job.
Yeah, that's one thing I kind of want. Almost outshined Sonic and Knuckles in a way, because that's a pro. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Idris Elba is a great actor, but you don't translate over to, and we've seen it many times in kids movies, you don't translate over to voice acting as easily just because you're a decent actor. There's a whole different dynamic that goes with it.
And, you know, that's one thing that's like bothered me the past like 10 or so years about movies, 20 years, because, you know, think about like 90s movies. Think about 90s Disney, for example. They had like dedicated voice actors, and, you know, that was their job, voice acting. But then as like time went on, it started, you know, saying like, they started saying, you know, getting these big name actors to do voice work. And it just didn't translate well, because that's not what they were trained for. Mm-hmm. Prime example, Lion King. So have you seen both the Lion Kings? I mean, I'm sure you've seen the classic, but have you seen the live action?
I did not see the live action one. No.
Yeah, don't. But so, you know, like Beyonce is one of the biggest stars in the world. Mm-hmm. But, you know, you watch the original Lion King and you can tell like these voice actors were like passionate about what they're doing. And like, if there was a scene where they had to like, you know, they were running from someone, you could tell like the voice actor had actually like, you know, done some kind of physical activity to make themselves like sound tired or whatever. But in the CGI Lion King, it's like they're just you can tell they're reading off of a script.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with it. It almost seems like, hey, Beyonce's in this movie, let's bring them on because their fans will come and see the Lion King because they'll put their names up on there. And it's all about selling tickets. And I get that the bottom line is make as much money as possible. But this was a smart, because they could have easily done any big artist out there, some music, whoever, to do Tails, just like they've proven they've done with some of the other characters here, like Knuckles. In fact, Jason Momoa, I was reading some trivia on it. Jason Momoa was who they were trying to get for Knuckles.
Voice, yep.
And he couldn't do it because of Aquaman 2, and now they got Idris, and the rumor is that Jason's going to voice Shadow the Hedgehog.
But, you know, with all that I just said, I do think that Ben Schwartz and Idris Elba did a great job as Sonic and Knuckles. Ben Schwartz, like, I loved his performance in the first one. He brought that like right kind of attitude to Sonic.
Yes, they did do great, but I don't know if because and if you've noticed it too, but I noticed like Tails was, I'm like, this person's a real pro though. You know what I mean? Like they just really nailed it. And I'm sure for the general audience, it's all great and it's good enough and everything. But that is one thing that I definitely noticed. I'm like, this Tails is absolutely a voice actor, and they've absolutely can can get all the inflections right, and they can make the voice their own and everything. But I did think that all of these lines coming out of Knuckles, this deep voice, when you first got that trailer, even what makes you think I need your power, all of that in there. It's just, it fits the character well because this is someone who took his mission very seriously, takes what's happening very seriously, and is pretty much a kind of a, could have been a deadly character for Sonic if he didn't turn back around, if things weren't a little bit more careful. Like, he was ready to kill him until Tails ran him over.
Yeah, Tails hit him with the car. And I did like that scene where, he was trapped underwater and Sonic, saved him. Of course, we got the reference where Sonic sucked up the air bubble.
Right, yeah, we did.
I've seen several people online say that you can hear the drowning music for like a couple of seconds. I didn't catch that either time, but I definitely want to listen out for that next time.
I was specifically listening for it, and I didn't hear it either. So
yeah, I don't know if it's people like, sometimes you want to hear something so bad, like Knuckles, coming back to, pull Sonic up. That was a great scene.
Yeah, that was neat. And we didn't get Knuckles' theme either, that I noticed, at least from Sonic and Knuckles or Sonic 3. So that wasn't really worked in there. I didn't notice quite as much from that aspect. I'm glad they did not do I Know the Way. I'm so fucking happy they didn't go with that meme, because there was a good chance they had Sonic in the first one.
Well, they kind of had Sonic in this one too, with that little dummy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it pretty much looked like exactly like him. So I was like, man, they better not do it. They better not do it with Knuckles, because I hate that every time I look for a GIF or an image for Knuckles, it's that meme. I'm like, son of a bitch, like that's what he's known for now, instead of the actual character. So they laid off of it, and Millennial Mike even kind of predicted it, where he was like, it's kind of frowned upon a little bit. It's kind of a little racist and all that. So they might not. And I'm like, well, I hope they don't. I fucking hope they don't. And they didn't. But did you notice any other references aside from that Sonic? We talked about the end boss with Eggman kind of building him, the Mean Bean Machine. What other things did you notice that maybe I didn't catch as when you were watching it?
Knuckles asking if the ice cream had grapes.
Yes, because that's his favorite food, right?
Yep. I caught that when Sonic entered the labyrinth zone and he was like coming down the water slides.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yep. Because that was like a big thing. Like when you started labyrinth zone, God, there was so many. I can't remember them all.
And we got that cool snowboarding scene. I was hoping for a little bit of that music in there.
Yep. And when you can see this in the trailer too, when all the sewers erupted at the beginning when he was like stopping the heist.
Mm-hmm.
That was straight from the opening of Sonic Adventure. Chaos coming out of the sewers.
Right. Yeah, I did read that one. I've never played the first Sonic Adventure. I went straight to, I didn't have a Dreamcast, and then I know they later released it on the GameCube, but by then I had already played Sonic Adventure 2 Battle.
Oh, you should play it.
I didn't. I never went back. I should, but that's what.
Just play Gamma's story.
He doesn't show up in the second one, does he? As far as a playable character.
Do you care about spoilers?
No.
So he dies in the first one, and he actually stays dead. Which that's what I didn't like about Shadow. Like, I loved his arc in Sonic Adventure 2, and when they bought him back, like he sacrificed himself to save Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And then they brought him back, and it's like, oh, maybe he's an alien. Maybe he's a ancient being. Maybe he's a clone. Maybe he's a robot. It's like, good Lord.
Came back with guns. Now let's talk about the alien aspect, because this is something that other films don't get a pass on. Like the Michael Bay films with the Turtles, they were aliens initially, and then they did reshoots and changed it due to fan feedback. In this one, they're literally beings from other dimensions and other planets. They are technically aliens, but it seems like fans are okay with this. So why do you think that is? What do you think the difference is there?
If they tried to say like, oh yeah, they're from Earth, I feel like there would be a lot more explaining to do.
But I don't know. Maybe it's because they never straight up say these are aliens prior to when they were making the film, because that all came out, the Michael Bay stuff, where they're like, and the intention is like it all leaked, the plot. These are turtles from outer space, and they're here on Earth. And even though in the comics, the ooze is also from another planet, it's interdimensional, so they are technically of alien origin in a way. But here in the Sonic universe, because in the games, they don't make that same explanation, right? The whole interdimensional warping with the real world, as far as Sonic 1 or Sonic Adventures 1 and 2, they're just a part of Earth already, right?
Yeah, they never I don't think they ever specifically say Earth. Yeah, like starting with, I believe it was Adventure. There's just, human characters, and they just kind of don't explain it.
So on your end, then with the fan bases, there's obviously no problem at all with them being aliens, technically.
I mean, not really. I
Gotcha.
haven't explained.
I just thought that was interesting how different like certain movies get treated because of that. And
Well, the Ninja Turtle story, if I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't they like regular turtles on Earth, and then they got infected by the ooze?
which is an alien origin, yeah, the ooze itself.
Okay,
So
I don't know much about Ninja Turtles, so the ooze is alien.
correct.
But in the movie, they made the turtles alien.
In the first draft, they were from Dimension X, which is also a tie into the comic books because that's how the Krang come from the other dimensions as well. And the turtles were from a planet that were more humanoid animals, which also is from the comics, not the turtles specifically, but there is a planet where there's like Triceratops people and all of that.
Okay.
And they instead made it so that those turtles were from that dimension or that planet and then made their way to Earth. So kind of explained it in that way. So kind of playing around with the origin, I guess, is maybe more or less what people had a bigger issue with. But at the time I was like, but it's all still, I mean, read the comics. There's a lot of alien tie-ins. So I think it's because there's this image of UFOs coming down and then 4 turtles or something like that. Like, I think that's what people kind of had in mind was going to happen before all of the rewrites ended up going on. But we did talk about some of the game references. Obviously, there was the Sega manual that Stone has.
Yeah, for the robot.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really neat little Easter egg that they put in there. What was your legitimate favorite part of the entire film?
Oh, that's a tough one. Seeing Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles team up against the Eggman robot was definitely up there. That was straight out of Sonic Heroes. Seeing them all on the plane was pretty cool too, but like they didn't really do much with that.
True.
But it was a really cool visual. And I like that Tails like kind of stole the plane from the wedding. I thought that was pretty funny. Like the whole scene where they're on the little, I keep wanting to say floating island, but it wasn't a floating island. It was like a submerged island, fighting in front of the emerald and everything like that. I would say that was probably my favorite part of the movie.
And that's the one, it was like the hidden temple zone or whatever, right? That they were kind of referencing?
Hidden Palace, yeah.
Hidden Palace.
I want to say like they went with that instead of going with the floating island, because if it's going to take place on Earth, I guess the floating island would have been a little bit too out there.
Yeah, the only way you could have, I'm trying to remember now. Wasn't there a scene where after, maybe I'm misremembering it with a different movie, but I thought there was a scene where something came out of the planet and that's where they found after the Chaos Emerald was taken out. Whenever you watch it, I don't know why I remember there being a floating scene with land floating.
No, the water kind of parted, and there was like land under the water, but it wasn't floating, I don't believe.
Okay. Because that could have been a way to sort of explain it. Like if the water parted and it's like, oh, it's being held up by the emerald or whatever, that could have been a way to do it. But maybe that was a subtle reference, if any at all. Maybe not. Maybe I'm kind of looking too much into it. Those were my favorite parts too. I mean, I really liked the snowboarding scene. I thought that was really neat to watch all of the crazy drones and robots going after Sonic.
That was very cool.
That was a great scene. That's what I like, is there was just neat sequences to the whole film.
Yeah, and I love how Knuckles just like destroyed one of the robots, like just punched the shit out of it and just like, grab a piece of it and use that as the board.
Yeah. And then they all crashed the fucking wedding. What's he say? Like, I ignored the first rule of undercover work: never fall in love with the subject.
And because people told me, like everybody I saw the movie with the first time, they said that guy's going to be an undercover agent because I guess like he plays a cop or something in everything he's in.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I guess I could see that. I think it was my sister that was mentioning during that whole wedding sequence. She's like, it all kind of turned into like a Medea film. And I'm like, a little bit. Yeah. Where there's a lot of drama going on. There's this undercover portion, but he's really in love with her. I'm like, yeah, it kind of is a little bit. And that would have been like, I should have liked that. I love the Medea films, but we just didn't have Medea there to put everyone together and do a big lesson, big family thing. That's the only thing that was missing right there. That would have been a great addition to the.
When the Blu-ray comes out, they'll have a deleted scene with Tyler Perry in there.
Oh my God, that would be so cool. Sonic is a part of the Medea cinematic universe.
Yes.
How about your least favorite part of the film, if you have one?
Probably the Russian dance scene.
Oh, really? No shit.
Yeah, because I'm not a big fan of like dance off scenes and like
Oh, okay.
when they walked in and like oh, it's it's a dance battle. Like I just kind of rolled my eyes and I was like, ugh.
Kind of like definitely for the kids type of thing, right?
The thing, it was definitely geared towards the kids because I feel like that was what Tails was. Tails is more like kid like, so I definitely think that that was geared towards kids. But like I don't know, like whenever I see like dance off scenes in movies, I just roll my eyes.
And it was a little bit of a retread of the first film where they're in the bar,
Yeah.
where things get kind of nuts.
Again, I get why the scene exists because it was supposed to be Sonic and Tails bonding time or whatever, but I just wish they would have gone with something a little bit less goofy.
Yeah, I totally get that. And something not as familiar as the first, although that's kind of one of those pitfalls that a lot of these studios and screenwriters fall in, where they're like, all right, let's do the things that worked in the first film and do them again. Like, reference.
You know what they didn't have that I expected them to bring back? Remember the whole scene again in the bar from the first one when they did that whole Quicksilver, like slow-mo? They didn't have that in this one. I really expected that.
Being as fast as Sonic is, like, obviously there's a lot of that where if he's truly fighting Knuckles or Eggman, he can go into that mode and easily like mow down everything. But I guess for the sake of plot, he can't all the time.
And they did make Knuckles fast in this movie. He's not as fast as Sonic, but like, prime example, like he was able to keep up with the cop car.
Well, that was the one scene that I did have a little bit of an issue with from both a special effects and kind of logic standpoint, I guess, is they're driving away from him and you see him running in the background. And the CGI is kind of shoddy in that scene where he's kind of floating in portions. Like they couldn't really keep it in line with the background with the road. So I'm like, okay, I get it. It's totally CGI'd back there. It just doesn't look as clean. But he was running forever to try to catch up with them. And if he were as fast as Sonic, Sonic would have easily caught up at 60 miles per hour or however fast they were going, if that.
I was just surprised that like they made Knuckles that fast that he could actually like, kind of catch a car.
Yeah, true.
But Sonic, obviously, like you saw in the scene with the armed robbery at the beginning, like he undrilled the car in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, very easily. And I'm glad that they did do the Knuckles climbing stuff from the game as well. They got a slight reference. Like he didn't use it a lot in the movie, but it's like, nope, he can do that too. And that was in there.
He didn't glide.
He what?
He didn't glide.
Oh yeah, that's true. There was one scene where I expected that to happen. I think it was during the plane scene or
he jumps
something. He just jumps down.
He just crosses his arms and like falls backwards. I took him to like glide off of the plane and into the Eggman robot. That
would have been cool. That would have been really neat. But he just kind of and then you see him running with them later on. I kind of already spoke about my least favorite part of the film, and that was the wedding scene. When they're using those gadgets against the gun agents or whatever, and oh, I don't know what this does, and oh, that worked perfectly.
Yeah, it was very cartoony, but again, I get why it exists.
So that's the only part. Like maybe if it were cut down a bit, because I did notice that maybe the last third of the film, I'm like, all right, this is getting a little long, type of thing. And normally I'm totally fine with long movies, but when it starts to feel a little, that's when I'm like, okay, that it feels only this way because of the wedding scene a little bit. So it is what it is. And I even noticed Leo was kind of losing a little bit of interest when we got to that scene with the wedding. Like, all right, where's Sonic? I'm sure he was a little like concerned or whatever. But that'd be my answer right there. We kind of talked a little bit about what we want to see already with the third part of the film. I think based on how it's doing on the box office, it's outperforming the first film. I don't know what the budget was for this one compared to the first one, but it seems like we're pretty much, I think, guaranteed a third part based on the success. I don't know how the merch is doing. There's a lot more merch this time around, right? Thanks to the not having a redesign.
For sure. They're going all out with the merch this time. I'm so glad we got like a Jim Carrey, a Robotnik action figure, the tornado plane. The tornado plane's like one of the things that I've been wanting for the longest time, in my 27 years of Sonic collecting.
Is this the first time they do like a toy, like a big toy of it?
The only other thing they've done is a statue, a first floor figure.
Gotcha.
But this is the first toy.
And do you know if it does any kind of funny light up noises or anything like that?
It doesn't. It's just the plane.
Oh, that's so neat. Yeah, I ended up picking up a Knuckles based on the movie action figure. Scott and I have noticed that there's like the plush as well, the different little action figures. We haven't seen the plane. And that's the one thing I have not come across yet.
In a Walmart.
Is it a Walmart exclusive or you've just seen it there?
I'm pretty sure it's going to be everywhere, but I've only seen it at Walmart so far.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to keep an eye out because the merch itself seems to be doing well. Like when Scott and I go to Target every week, we go through the toy aisle, and there's some toys that don't move at all, like the Eternals. There's Sanchi, like it's always the same ones. The Batman, it's always the exact same figures.
It's funny too because they dedicate so little shelf space to Sonic.
Yep.
Like Sonic stuff just doesn't move that well. But then, have you ever seen a Sonic item on clearance at Target? Because I haven't.
I don't think I have. No. If I have it, it would have been like the little tiny ones, like the little 3-inch ones. Maybe one time I noticed it, but otherwise, every time we go by the Sonic section, it's a refresh of different figurines. It's like we do see the chili dog Sonic every time we go there. There's like a bunch of them. And I don't know if kids just want like the more action-y type of Sonic to go with, but otherwise there's always different ones. There's even the little robots that they fight. Those are always gone. Metal Sonic is gone. Knuckles, they even like those shiny versions or whatever they call them, like the neon versions, those didn't last long. Those sold pretty quickly. And I'm glad that at least the merch side is being supported by the movie and by the third part. Was there anything else as far as the third film that I kind of missed? I mean, I know we talked a lot about Shadow, but as far as any kind of sort of wrap up to the Sonic movies and kind of making them a trilogy, or should they keep making them a little bit open-ended with a future tease with a 4th and 5th film?
Oh, I'd love to see him continue on and be open-ended. And, we also got the Knuckles series coming to, I think it's Paramount Plus as well.
Yeah, it seems like they're going to be exploring, which I did not expect, honestly. No. I kind of thought that they'd do more of a either Sonic and Tails thing or just straight up Sonic spin-off episodes or shows or whatever they wanted to do. So with Knuckles itself, the future of that show, do you know if it's exploring his years in between?
It's got to be a prequel.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, because otherwise, what do you do when he's on Earth? As far as, is he learning the customs? But you can't have him grow too much between parts 2 and 3. Like, it's still kind of the ongoing joke of him learning things from Earth.
That's one thing I was looking out for at the end of the second movie too. Is like, okay, is Knuckles going to go back to his dimension because that could lead into the Knuckles series? But no, now I think it's totally going to be a prequel.
Right, him growing up, becoming a warrior. There's probably going to be new characters they introduced to help him along the way. The Echidna tribe there, I was a little surprised that they went with that aspect of it, because I was most reminded by, correct me if I'm wrong, but by the Archie run, when they showed all those echidnas and the different like decorations they had on them and the clothing.
Yep. It did remind me of that a little bit.
That's not something they established in the video games, right? Like, were they fully within?
Yeah, they did in Sonic Adventure.
Like, I guess my question is, are they within full legal rights to use stuff from the Archie run and put it on the big screen?
Nope. Only
certain portions then, obviously, because I don't remember that. Maybe it was different enough from the Archie books that they could argue, like, if there were to be some lawsuit where they weren't specifically characters from the comics, I guess, but they do still have some of like the decorations on their hair and whatnot.
The Echidna Warrior clan was a thing in the games before it was in the comics.
Okay, perfect.
I think.
As long as if it was before, because I remember the Knuckles comic books were doing a lot of that, the clan stuff in the ongoing and in the solo series, and that was before Sonic Adventure. So I don't know what other games, where else did they have them?
I could be wrong too.
Okay, I just had that kind of question of it. I'm like, oh, this is cool then. Like, maybe we could get some more of it. Maybe not too much from the Archie run, but I thought that was kind of interesting that they chose to go that close to the Archie series in a way, but they kind of undid it and they're all dead.
Yeah.
Which I thought was neat. So are you going to be watching the Knuckles series? Do they have you on for Paramount Plus?
Oh, for sure.
Are you already subscribed to it, or are you going to wait?
I was subscribed to it.
Yeah, that's going to be one. Like, they already have the Halo show on there, and I'm like, oh man, like, and I'm hearing great things from Millennial Mike. And now with this Knuckles show, is it this year that it comes out?
I don't think they've set a release date yet.
Okay, so then at that point, maybe next year at the very earliest, because we're already in April, and we probably would have gotten some other stuff at this point. But yeah, man, like, Leo loved Knuckles. He loved Sonic. Sonic's still his favorite, but he really liked Knuckles because his favorite color is red, so he kind of has to justify it in a way. And when that comes out, like, he already loves the movie. He wants to see it. He was asking as soon as we left the theater, can I see it again at home? And I'm like, no, not yet, man. It comes out in a couple months. But when it comes out, we'll buy it. Completely forgot about the first Sonic movie. Like, he hasn't asked to see that one. I think kids, I believe, will like the sequel more because it's more colorful. There's more characters. It's bigger. It's
Definitely
not so much a buddy cop movie like we were talking about, less grounded, as you kept saying. And this one is just more fun. And I think that's the direction they're going to go in, and not at the sacrifice of the plot, because a lot of times when they make a movie more quote unquote fun, they sacrifice some of the more serious aspects of the plot and the character development. Like you see that with some of the MCU or the modern DC movies. And now with Sonic, though, they kept a lot of the heart in there. Sonic's in peril like crazy in this one. You know, he passes out a few times, I think, and he's in danger quite a bit, where I kept looking over and Leo was like legitimate. He's only 4 years old, so he was like scared. He was like covering his eyes when Sonic would get hurt or whatever. And I'd be like, oh, it's okay, buddy. Like in the first one, do you remember when he uses a tranquilizer against him?
Yep.
When he first sees him, like, he does that and Sonic knocks out. And I don't think Leo understands the concept of tranquilizer. So Leo goes, he killed Sonic. Oh. And I'm like, I guess it does look that way. So and now that he's seen it, though, he kind of sees that he makes it out okay. You get Supersonic, and now he's more comfortable, I think, in watching the sequel. And I think we'll definitely take him to the third one. He picked up one of those promo comics that they had at the theater for the comic, and it's very well loved, man. Like, he's flipped through it so many times, and he's like, I finished reading it. He just looks at the pictures, and then he gets to the end, and he's like, I'm done reading it, and he puts it with my other comics. He's like, this is where the comics goes. So kids, this is great for kids. Where there be another, and I'm taking another page from Millennial Mike's podcast, The Film Exiles, and I want to ask you, who would you recommend this film for?
Everyone, man. Kids, if people that grew up with Sonic, especially 90s kids. I mean, I think anybody from ages like 5 to like 35, even 40.
That was one of the things that I felt that it's hard to hit that balance, because you see it in Pokemon of you try to hit that balance of getting the old gamers in and at the same time getting kids into the game because they're the future of the franchise. And Pokemon has straight up said their focus, they make games for kids. They make games to get the next generation of kids in there.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily for people my age anymore. And that's something that I have to remind myself when they announce a new Pokemon game like Pokemon Arceus or anything like that, something that's different than what I'm used to. I have to remind myself, like, this stuff isn't for me anymore. Pokemon has straight up said this. Now, you see it on the flip side with something like Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2, the movies, some of the games, and they very much know that a large chunk of their audience, yes, a large chunk is kids, and kids are getting into it, but it's also these adults that grew up with this stuff, and they're going to be there to buy the merch. They're going to be there to show, like me with my son. Like, I grew up with Sonic and Knuckles, and I'm going to show him the new movie, and he's into it too. And they struck that balance so well. I think you nailed it. This is a movie that appeals to both the longtime Sonic fan and to those up and coming.
For sure.
And I think this is another one of those movies that in 30 years and 20 years, we're going to notice, hopefully, that a lot of people are going to say, my first Sonic experience was the Sonic movie. and I'll totally see it.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
Because what other Sonic thing, like, even if you want to talk about the games, in the last 5 or 10 years, would you say has brought Sonic to the forefront as much as the Sonic films have?
Yeah, I mean, Sonic Mania Plus is really about it.
And I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way. I'm not saying that Sonic wasn't popular before the films or anything like that. I'm mainly going with, like, as far as general audience and getting new people into the games and into the characters and all of that. Even when I was working at the comic shop and selling the Sonic comic book, it was a lot of people in their 20s and their 30s that were buying the Sonic comic. And sometimes there'd be kids that would come in and say, oh, I want a cool Sonic or a comic book. And I'd point them to the Sonic books because those were popular. They know Sonic from the video games or whatever. But now, after these films, I think the stuff like this helps create generations of fans. And whatever next game they come out with, whether it's, what is it, Sonic Worlds? What's the new one called?
Frontiers,
whether it's that one or something else in between, if they nail it as far as the quality, that's going to really ramp up and put some gas into the future sales of those games too, because these kids are now going to go, oh, that's the new Sonic game. I like the Sonic movie. I'm into Sonic. Let me buy that game. They're going to be asking for that stuff for birthdays and Christmas. And I think this is, as much as video games get a bad reputation for getting adapted to films, this is yet another example of that I could point to of, no, you can do it, and you can do it right, and you can do it to where the consumers will be there for that. It will help your brand. Anytime they announce a video game movie, I know most gamers scoff and roll their eyes, but I'm like, look, let's give it a fucking shot. We've done it already with Mortal Kombat, Tomb Raider, Detective Pikachu, and now with Sonic. Like, how many good fucking examples do we need of them adapting video games successfully for gamers to finally stop rolling their eyes? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just think that like a lot of gamers grew up with that expectation the movie is going to suck, so it's like hard to break that stereotype.
I think so too, and I still try to even convince friends, like, come on, man, like, look at the Resident Evil films. We had 8 solid ones.
Uncharted didn't help.
Which one?
Uncharted.
I didn't see it, but I don't like Tom Holland. But people like that fucking film. Like, I don't know what it is.
I mean, I've never been the biggest Uncharted fan, but like all my friends that are big Uncharted fans didn't like it. And then also too, like I was a huge Resident Evil fan growing up, and Welcome to Raccoon City wasn't great.
That's the new one, right?
Yeah. The trailer got me so hyped, and like when you actually see the film, it's like, this isn't good.
Like, I know we're bullshitting a little bit here, but I want to ask you about Resident Evil real quick now, because the director said that he made this film for the fans first rather than.
So imagine if the Sonic movie was filled with all the references we liked.
Yes.
But the movie was dumb.
Do you feel like the references took place ahead of the plot in that one?
I think so. Did you play Resident Evil growing up?
I played 4, and then I played 0, 1.
Like they make Leon like kind of dumb.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Because he's one of the main staples of the whole franchise. I do want to see it though, and the problem is I really like the Paul Anderson films with Mila Jovovich, because they get kind of insane, kind of like the Fast and Furious films do, but it's kind of like to the point where it's like, let's just see what happens. Like, it's just they're cool films, and they do enough in there where they hold my interest. They're entertaining and whatever. So obviously the studio knew that they needed to make more Resident Evil films, because he wasn't going to come back for another one. He did the final chapter, and that did extremely well for the Resident Evil franchise, that it kept the franchise alive. And now, you know, when you try to do it with someone that doesn't have the same care for that world that they set up, like Paul Anderson did, and they try to do their own separate thing, which one could argue that, and I haven't seen it, but I'm guessing Welcome to Raccoon City is more quote unquote closer to the video games, or more faithful to them in a way compared to the Paul Anderson ones.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Paul Anderson ones weren't bad, but I feel like a lot of aspects were Resident Evil in name only, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we get the liquor here and there. We get the Nemesis in the second film, and you get Wesker sort of like depowered and underpowered, and suddenly he's a god, and suddenly he's not throughout the film. So there's enough nods in there, but I get what you're saying. But it goes to kind of to show people that if you try to make, just because it's closer to the source material doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better. And that's what it sounds like happened here with Welcome to Raccoon City. And even with Sonic, like, this is a kind of a departure to any of the games as far as story goes. And they seem to do it successfully. They built their own story. They had enough in there from the games and the characters that we recognize the characters and their stories. And that's why I think it ended up being a success. You can do something different from the establishment, but as long as you have enough in there that's familiar to the fans, then they're going to embrace it. And this is an example of that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, Justin, I think we pretty much covered this pretty well as far as going into what we mainly liked about the film. I think overall we both really enjoyed it. I don't think either of us disliked it. Obviously, there's some parts. It's not a perfect film, and I didn't expect it to be, especially with when you make something that's adapted and it's for kids, and it's like, all right, there's going to be some things here that not everything's going to be for me, and that's totally fine. But I think overall, I agree with you. It is a good family film. It's a good film for fans as well. So it is a pretty big success, and I want to thank you for agreeing to be on and being the one to talk about this film and go deep into it. I know I started off a little bit on some of the things I didn't like about it, but that's kind of how I do my reviews a little bit, or my discussions.
And thank you again for having me. Like, I'm always down to come back on. I feel like we always have a great time.
To any like newer bro cats, he's been on. The last when it came on, I think the first time you ever were on must have been like 5 years ago, right? 4 years ago.
18.
2018, yeah, and it goes by quick. So anytime there's a big Sonic, we talked about the collectibles before, and because you're into a lot of the similar stuff that I'm into. We've talked about South Park before, obviously, and the superhero stuff, and I think since the last recording, we've grown closer as friends. So I would definitely like to have you on a lot more often and maybe talk some more stuff outside of Sonic as well. Like definitely Sonic because we both love this stuff. But
yeah, no, for sure. If you do a podcast about or an episode about the upcoming Dragon Ball superhero, I'd be down for that. And I'm definitely in all the superhero movies and stuff like that. So,
were you following the stuff with Dragon Ball Super over the boycott and everything with Mark on Funimation
with Toei?
Yeah, totally not Mark. I think was the guy's name against Toei.
Yes.
Yeah, that was one thing. I'm glad they sort of settled things because there was a lot of fans that were going to boycott that Dragon Ball Super film.
Yeah, that was definitely way too excessive on their part.
Yeah, and I kept telling like Scott and them, I'm like, yeah, like they're assholes for doing it, but also they could sort of, because it's in Japan and copyright rights are different.
What a lot of people don't realize is like Japan, like especially like big companies like that, Sega's the same way. They're all about business.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of my friends over at Sega Europe was saying like anytime he calls over to Japan or emails over, like, if he just wants to know something like for like a fan project or like, like he's wondering about, he works on like one of the Sonic mobile games and he's like wondering about, this, like they have to know why, like why, how does this relate to business? You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
So like Japan is like strictly business on a lot of aspects.
Right. No nonsense type of thing. How much is this going to make us at the end of the day?
Right.
But for sure, we will talk about Dragon Ball Super. Let's go ahead and make that note. As soon as that comes out, we'll check it out. We'll watch it and have you back on and talk about it. If not before then, maybe we'll have some fun and we'll do a regular news episode. I'd like to have you on and get your take on a lot of the stuff that we cover here on the show. And if this is your first episode listening with Justin on Treasure Hunting Sonic, he does have a massive Instagram account. He has a big Twitter account as well, and he shares Sonic collectibles. He's on top of it when it comes to newly solicited items, links to stuff when it goes up for pre-order or for order straight up. He'll put it up on Instagram stories, and there will be links in the description of the show, but go ahead and let them know where they can find these accounts.
You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook under Treasure Hunting Sonic, and Twitter at Sonic Toy Hunter.
Awesome. Make sure to follow it. I know a lot of Brocats are collectors, whether it's comics or TCG, Sonic the Hedgehog. So I know they appreciate a good collection and a good collector. So please follow Treasure Hunting Sonic, and you will see a lot of great stuff on his pages. And otherwise, if you want to check out the rest of the episodes that we have on here, if this is your first episode of the podcast, head on over to thereasonsimbroke.com. And we do cover comics, movies, TV, video games, and more every single week, the latest through news and headlines. Thank you again, Justin. Hang on tight for after the end song. I do have one more question to ask you, but I want to thank you again for being on. And Brocat Core, all will be well.
Thank you for having me. See you next time.
All right, Justin, if there had been another Sega world teased in here, let's say they were portal jumping towards the end of the film and you just see a glimpse of one, not Shenmue, because I know that would have been your answer. Other than Shenmue, what would have been the other world you would have liked to kind of have seen connected here?
You're actually wrong. You know what my answer would have been, but I know it would have been impossible? Yakuza.
Okay, all right. No shit, all right.
Yakuza was a great movie, but they would not reference that in Sonic because it's like two totally different age ratings there.
Oh,
if
yeah.
You're going something more Sonic-y.
The one answer I keep seeing is Super Monkey Ball.
I don't know if that would translate as a movie, though.
As far as like kids, like, oh, they jump in and they see like a monkey ball world and like.
I was going to say Hatsune Miku.
I'd have to look that up. What is that?
The girl with the green hair, the fake virtual idol.
Yeah. What about Segata Sanshiro?
That I would love that, but that would never happen. He should have a cameo in the third film.
Oh yes, he should. He really should.